I get a little jealous at times when I see a phrase that I know I could have come up with and somebody beats me to it. And that's this phrase that's coming here. Let the buffer go, 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 go. Woke War 3. David Sachs used that phrase, and I'm I'm going to agree with it. It was trending on Twitter. Great phrase. I can't believe he was the first person I've heard use it. Neocons and the woke left are joining hands and leading us to woke war 3, an opinion piece. Let's listen to this, a little bit of this here.
The neocons and the woke left are joining hands and leading us to woke war 3. Opinion. Elon Musk got in hot water again on Twitter for proposing peace. On Monday,
we are in, that's why woke war 3 is one of the best phrases to describe it. Only the ideology of wokeness and Nina Turner the other day was like, well, what define what woke is? And I responded to her. I said, woke is all of these fake positions that you have to maintain your access card to the establishment. That's what it is. Woke is whatever the establishment wants you to think. So right now, the establishment wants you to think this war going on over there is a good thing. So that's how crazy it is. Elon Musk got into hot water again on Twitter for what? For proposing peace. That is a backward society, especially when you're talking about a situation that has nothing to do with America.
Proposed a peace deal to end the war in Ukraine, for which he was denounced as a pro-Putin puppet by the Twitter mob that has formed to police the discourse on all things related to Ukraine. The president of Ukraine himself, Volodymyr Zelensky, accused Musk of supporting Russia, even though Musk company SpaceX donated Starlink to Ukraine's war effort at an out-of-pocket cost of $80 million. Full disclosure, Musk is a friend and I am an investor in SpaceX. Ukrainian ambassador to Germany Andrzej Melnik was less subtle, telling Elon to FK off. While David Frum tweeted without evidence that Russian sources had used Elon to float a trial balloon of a peace proposal because they're afraid of losing Crimea. Scores of blue checks on Twitter followed their lead, ordering Musk to stay in his lane. What matters in this story is not that Musk was.
So what if Putin was the one that did it? I don't think there's no proof that he was, but so what? If Putin is trying to look for peace, do you want kamikaze drones flying to your city? All these people supporting this war, you don't have kamikaze drones flying through your city. Ultimately, the people of Kiev and Ukraine have got to stand up if they want this or not. I don't know how you could want kamikaze drones flying through your city and not say, well, let's at least talk. Let's at least have the lines of communication open to talk about peace.
Told off, but rather that a Twitter hive mind is using the same intolerant cancellation tactics that they use to shut down debate on domestic political issues in order to shape U.S. policy toward Ukraine. They are doing so by demonizing dissent, defaming opponents, and closing off as ideologically unacceptable any path to peace or even de-escalation. The online mob has decided that any support for a negotiated settlement, even proposals that Zelensky himself appeared to support at the beginning of the war, is tantamount to taking Russia's side, denouncing voices of compromise and restraint as.
Let's be clear, what Russia is asking for is not, to me, a lot. They want Ukraine to be neutral. They don't want any weapons in Ukraine, and they want the eastern part that with the people that, from what I read, they speak Russian. I don't know about the Donbass area, Crimea, all that. I'm just looking at this now, recently, over the last few years. They seem to want to be a part of Russia. So I don't understand how that's a large ask. And he says, I don't want Ukraine to be in NATO. People say, well, what if Russia takes over Ukraine? Well, they don't have the troops to do that. They can't even keep Ukraine. Even without American weapons and support, I don't think they could hold Ukraine. Do you know how much manpower it takes to hold a massive land like that? And then why would they want their border closer to NATO? They don't want a border closer to NATO. So none of that makes sense. From what they've leaked, what Russia's asking for seems reasonable to me.
Putin apologists. This removes them from acceptable discourse and shrinks the Overton window to those advocating the total defeat of Russia and an end to Putin's regime, even if it risks World War III. We've seen this before. Woke mobs on Twitter routinely demonize and defame their political opponents, impugn the motives of anyone who questions their goals or tactics, and squelch dissent even in their own ranks by declaring the debate on certain topics over.
Preach.
What makes the I Stand With Ukraine version of the Twitter mob unique is that it brings together two forces that used to be sworn enemies of one another, the woke left and the neoconservative right. It turns out they share many of the same loathsome ideological and personality traits.
This is incorrect. Now, there's a lot of confusion here. What we call the woke left right now is not the anti-war left. The anti-war left are people like Tim Pool, who are now pushed into whatever category people need to push them to. The woke left is controlled by the neocon left and right. That's what's happening. So this is all confusion with this ideology. The woke left now, and then there's more confusion because the word woke actually originated from hip hop, and it literally meant like you would literally call MAGA woke. You know, a lot of people who voted for Obama now are more populist and against the machine. Those people in the original term of the slang woke would be woke, but now it just got changed into these woke really now means zombie. It doesn't mean woke. So there's a lot of confusion there. The populist left still does not like this war. They haven't changed. They haven't gone anywhere. They've just been ostracized.
And have a similar slash and burn approach to political engagement. It's a new political marriage. Just over a decade ago, former President Barack Obama defeated Hillary Clinton in the Democratic primary to become president, due in no small part to his opposition to the Iraq War. At the time, the left despised neocon hawks for pushing the Bush-Cheney administration's disastrous forever wars in the Middle East. Moreover, the left supported Obama in his policy toward Ukraine when he refused to escalate with Russia over Crimea, pointing out that America has no vital security interest in Ukraine, though Russia does. As a result, Russia would always be able to maintain escalatory dominance, Obama said.
When he talked about the left here, the left despised neocon hawks for pushing the Bush-Cheney administration disastrous forever wars. So at that point, you had the people who were really establishment shills, and they were Democrats. So they would hate anything that Bush and Cheney did. I'm not a fan of them, but they didn't hate the war because of the war. Some of them. Now they're supporting war. Those are the same people. So the same people that were attacking Bush right now, they're supporting the war now because it's under Biden. If Trump were doing the war, I wouldn't support it, and they would be against it though. They don't know anything but the comfort of the establishment. I was watching Destiny on one of his streams. Great streamer, but he is really a weird dude. He almost comes across as a psyop. He's pro-establishment. What that means is whatever the establishment thinks, it's good. So if the establishment didn't want the war in Ukraine, Destiny trusts them to have the information, which is true. They have more information than me. I've never said I have more information than them, but my stance is anti-war no matter what, even China, Taiwan. So Destiny is pro-establishment. He would say, oh, if they don't think it's worth the war, then we won't do the war. If they think it's worth the war or the proxy war, we'll do it. That's the difference. So it's a very nuanced conversation. This is why I don't get into too many foreign politics, because unless you really study it, you don't know the ins and outs.
This is an example of where we have to be very clear about what our core interests are and what we are willing to go to war for. But since neoconservatives largely walked out of the Republican Party over Trump and disavowed all of their conservative domestic policy views to become commentators on MSNBC, the left has discovered a new love for interventionist foreign policy, as long as it serves democracy and opposes autocracy, an increasingly malleable term that both the wokes and the neocons now use to define not just Putin but also democratically elected leaders like Viktor Orban in Hungary, Giorgia Meloni in Italy, and Donald Trump in the United States. Despite voting for Obama because he promised to break with neoconservative foreign policy, the left has now joined with neocons to oppose Obama's restrained foreign policy in Ukraine. This shift is disorienting, but on a purely tactical level, it makes a certain amount of sense. Neocons invented the cancellation game before there was even a Twitter board on which to play it.
Yep.
Neocons arrogantly dismiss the other side's point of view as argued in bad faith and not worth considering, and label anyone who dares question the cause as a heretic or traitor. David Frum set the neocon standard for this tactic when he branded the small number of pundits on the right who opposed the Iraq War as unpatriotic conservatives at the outset of that strategic disaster. Fast forward to today, and anyone who suggests that NATO expansion could have been a contributing factor to the current Ukraine crisis or that the sanctions imposed on Russia are not working and have backfired on a soon-to-be shivering Europe, or even that the US must prioritize avoiding a world war with a nuclear-armed Russia, is denounced as a Putin stooge. Warping the debate in this way allows delusional and contradictory thinking to go unchallenged. Thus, we get the argument that Putin is a madman who will kill indiscriminately to achieve his aims, but he is also somehow definitely bluffing about using nuclear weapons. And he's only using that bluff because he's losing the war, but if he's not stopped in Ukraine, he will go on to conquer the rest of Europe. Putin's regime must fall because he has killed or jailed all the liberal reformers and yoked himself to a hardline far right, but somehow he will be replaced by a liberal reformer when his regime collapses. It's nonsensical, and a real debate would expose some of the delusions in this thinking. But we aren't allowed to have one. As long as this woke neocon alliance is allowed to set the terms of the debate, we will continue to see a one-way ratchet toward greater and more dangerous escalation of this conflict. There will be no peaceful resolution to this conflict that America doesn't at least have a hand in negotiating, and we should be leading the effort. Instead, we've been deferring to the Ukrainians and their maximalist demands, upping the sanctions on Russia as Putin ups his rhetoric against the West. Someone blew up the Nord Stream pipeline just in case another key nation such as Germany had any thoughts about coming to the bargaining table. And now we are playing a game of nuclear chicken with a Russian leader who, if his unhinged war against the West speech last Friday is any indication, has thrown away his steering wheel. A regional war turned into the First World War because all parties made maximalist demands and assumed others were bluffing. It can happen again, especially if the media, social media, and foreign policy elite join forces and use woke cancellation tactics to preclude discussion of any alternatives. Right now, we are locked on an escalatory path, and the destination ahead is Woke War 3.
Bars. What an excellent piece, and it sums everything up. At the end of the day, it's not about right, left, or whatever else. It's not about MAGA or what. Either you're for war or you're not. That's why I recently changed my position on China-Taiwan. And this is China-Taiwan is a way more important, way more scarier situation. If China goes to Taiwan, and Xi Jinping just talked about it yesterday in his big speech about, he started his speech with it. That's not normal for him. If they take Taiwan, then they own a lot of these chips that go into cars and all the different appliances in your house. If they own that and it goes into AI and all that as well, over time, we will become beholden to China. So if you wanted to do a proxy war or a war, it would be more over that. But I'm out on that. I used to kind of think I'm anti-war, but that's a different situation. No, I'm anti-war, period. Because we have time now to get stuff right here. And I haven't read the CHIPS Act, so I'm not going to endorse the CHIPS Act. Look that up. I'm saying CHIPS, CHIPS, to bring manufacturing to the States. I like the idea of it. You got to read these bills because there's all this pork and nonsense in it. So I'm not going to endorse a bill I haven't read, but I like the concept of doing incentives for people, companies to do their work here in America so we don't rely on Taiwan. But if China takes Taiwan tomorrow or right now, I'm out. Then we just have to bend over, bend the knee. We've failed. Diplomacy is the way. Diplomacy is the way to avoid this type of conflict. And I am for a strong military, even though I want to cut spending because I think there's too much bloat. You want to, even in a libertarian utopia, you've got to have a strong military, strength through peace through strength. I do believe in that. But there should be no war unless you are directly threatened. Let me know what you think. Do you like the term Woke War 3? Is there a way for us to just put this stuff aside, this left and right, and just say, I'd rather not have nuclear war. So let's figure out how to put pressure on these people in DC to stop this nonsense. Let me know what you think.